The next video we want to see is about JavaFX components. You don't need to study this in too much detail, but you need to know what components are available when you need to use them. Here's a list of some of the things we're going to cover, some in greater or lesser detail. So the first thing is a list. Now, a common list, is often something that you want to display, but you can't view a list directly in a GUI because it's not a descendant node. So list view holds a list, and it is useful for creating components and creating viewable components. So here's an example of creating an empty list view, filling it in afterwards. Now, you don't need to worry about what an observable list of string is and what FX collections observable array list is. Basically, you need to understand the format and copy it and put the strings that you want to show in the list here. Another way of doing this is to create the list view class like this, and then add the names add the list afterwards. So in list view mode, you can have a single selection mode or a multiple selection mode. You're very familiar with how GUIs normally work, that there's a drop-down menu. Sometimes you can select a single item, sometimes you are able to select multiples. And here's an example of what the two versions are. So you set selection mode to single or multiple. Now, once you select one, there's a change listener interface that has the method change, just like the action event has the method handle. And the arguments are here. Again, pretty obscure, but you need to put that in. And when the list view component generates an event, it executes the changed method. So you put whatever you want to have happen in the changed method. You could also use a getSelectedIndex if you wanted to return the index of the selected item. So here is a set of code that actually creates this list of the 12 months of the year and displays it. And once again, the observable list is a little bit obscure, but you can just copy and paste that. So if you set the selected item, you could set text in the change listener in the changed method so that you can show which one you selected. You could also add a scroll bar to a list. That doesn't automatically happen, but you put a scroll pane. You create a scroll pane, and then you set the pane. Actually, it seems a little bit backwards to me because you are putting the scroll pane around the list of names. It seems like it ought to be the other way around, but it's not. So you follow this construct. And there's the scroll bar. So if you wanted to get multiple items, you could get selected items, plural, or get selected indices, plural. So a combo box, you're very familiar with a combo box, but may not be familiar with how to create one in Java. So here's the idea of a combo box. The combo box starts out as just a button, or an obvious a button with a down arrow. You select the down arrow and it opens up the list. So here's code to do that. Again, you have to put in the changed method, the change listener interface, and the changed method. And again, get selected item, and so forth. Now, it would be possible for you to add to an existing list in the GUI if you have set editable to true. So here's an example where this list does not have the name of this one of Sharon in it, but you could type in the list, in the name, if this combo box is editable, and it would add it to this list, then you could select it. Here's an example of adding mocha to a list of various kinds of coffee. So the same idea of a list could be illustrated with an image. You have an image which isn't displayable, but then it goes inside an image view which is displayable. You could do things several ways. You could create the image from a file input stream or directly from a path. And then you've got this image, and you put that in an image view like this bullet here. Now you can also create the string directly in the image view. So you have the standard 3 file types of images that are supported. You could also put a URL in a path in the image. So here's an example of an image that is in the default location. Here's a complete application that shows several buttons that have, several labels that have a flower, just the image, just the label, or the label and the image. You can do various things with it. You can expand the size or decrease the size. You could also rotate it as it's shown in the code. You can display images on buttons as opposed to putting the text string, which we've always done with buttons. You could display an image on the button, and you could display an image and text in the 4 ways that are shown here, either no image, no label at all, a label only, a label and an image, or an image only. All 3 ways. Now, mnemonics. When you press the Alt key, typically it brings up some kind of shortcut. If you try that on your browser and press the Alt key, you'll see little black boxes come up because the browser, if you're using Firefox, it hasn't been implemented using Java. So how do you set this in Java? Well, you display let's say you're putting a button that once you want to have a mnemonic. You put an underscore in front of the letter. That underscore won't show up normally, but then when you press the Alt key, it'll underline the letter that you had put the underscore in front of. If that's proper grammar. So here's an example after you've pressed the Alt key. You've set text to underscore fill, and now when you press the Alt key, the underscore shows up underneath the fill. Except doesn't have any underscores, so it doesn't show up. The tooltip is kind of like similar to a mnemonic. It's a short description of what the component does. So here's in Java, they show up as black tooltips with white text, unless you do some fancy stuff to change the coloring. And you basically set tooltip to this new class called tooltip. So here's a color picker, and I won't go through the details of that. And there's a menu system. So all sorts of elements of a menu system: the menu bar, the menu items, the menu itself, the separator, so forth. Now, you've used a text field. It's a single line that you can type into. When you hit enter, it causes just like a button, it causes an event to happen that you have to handle. Text area is the same way, except it's general. It's larger normally, and you have either something you can type into or string that you can type set. So you can set wrap text to true, which is normally what you want to do. You can also set the font to be different. This is a bit of use of XML, FXML, but you can get away with that. You can create a slider like this, which returns the value that the slider is set to, either vertical or horizontal. And this is a demo how to set up the code. The last thing I want to show you is how to handle a mouse event. Now, believe it or not, the mouse covers every pixel. Every pixel that the mouse covers generates a new event. So here's the mouse demo. It's very simple, but if we enter the box, or if we exit the box, it shows up as yellow. If we press and release, it says pressed first and then clicked. If we drag and then release, and notice the XY, every single pixel that we're covering with the mouse generates an event that travels back to the handler and handles. Okay, so that's it for today. For the videos, let's look next at assignment 4, which is due the Thursday after we get back from spring break.